Do you fear me or desire me?
The fire popped and hissed between them, casting flickering shadows that danced across her face. But something seemed off about the way she was holding that rosary. Adam had stumbled upon her an hour earlier, kneeling next to a dead horse in the middle of nowhere. Her black habit was torn at the shoulder, and beads were scattered across the sand like fallen stars. She claimed her name was Sister Rosalie Dean, and that she was from the mission at San Miguel. But no mission in its right mind would send her nuns traveling alone through Apache territory at night. She thanked him for rescuing her, but her words sounded overly rehearsed. Yet her eyes held secrets that made his skin crawl with a strange mix of fear and fascination. When he inquired how she'd managed to survive for 3 days without water, she simply smiled and said, "God provides." However, her lips weren't chapped, her skin wasn't sunburned, and her hands were far too soft for someone who'd been clawing through the desert sand. The strangest part wasn't her pristine appearance or her too convenient story. It was the way she watched him when she thought he wasn't looking, carefully studying his movements as if she was memorizing something incredibly important. And when the wind shifted, carrying the distinct scent of smoke from distant fires, she didn't ask what was burning. She already knew. Adam poked at the fire with a stick, sending a shower of sparks spiraling into the star-filled sky, and tried to shake off the uneasy feeling that finding her wasn't just a matter of luck. Because in his saddlebags, carefully wrapped in oilcloth, was a letter bearing her name. A letter he'd never seen before tonight, written in handwriting he didn't recognize, containing information about his burn ranch that only 3 people in the entire territory should have known. But Sister Rosalie Dean was supposed to be dead. According to the mission records he'd personally checked just 2 months prior. The letter felt heavier than it should have as Adam's fingers traced its edges through the leather of his saddlebag. Sister Rosalie sat perfectly still across the fire. Her hands were folded in prayer, but her eyes remained wide open, fixed on him with an intensity that made his chest feel tight. The flames illuminated the delicate curve of her neck where her habit had slipped, revealing skin that glowed like polished ivory in the firelight. "You seem troubled, Mr. Baxter," she said softly, her voice possessing a richness that didn't belong to any nun he'd ever encountered. Perhaps confession would ease your burden. He jerked his hand away from the saddlebag as if burned. She knew his name, even though he'd never told it to her. The realization struck him like a bucket of ice water. But before he could respond, she shifted closer to the fire, and he caught a whiff of jasmine mingling with the wood smoke. No woman who'd spent days stranded in the desert should smell of flowers. "How do you know my name?" Word travels fast in small territories. Her fingers worked the rosary beads with practiced precision, but he noticed she was moving them in the wrong direction, counterclockwise instead of the traditional path of prayer, especially about men who've lost everything to fire. The muscles in his jaw clenched involuntarily. His ranch had burned to ground just 3 weeks ago while he was in town buying supplies. When he returned, nothing remained but smoldering ash and the acrid smell of kerosene, the kind of fire that burned too hot, too fast, too deliberate, the kind that required careful planning. "Tell me about the mission at San Miguel," he said, testing her story like a doctor probing a wound. "Beautiful place. Stone walls thick enough to keep out the world's temptations." She looked directly at him, and her smile held something that made his blood run warm despite the desert chill. "Though I found that the strongest walls are often the easiest to breach, don't you think?" The way she spoke about temptation made him think of things that had absolutely nothing to do with prayer. Her lips formed each word with deliberate care, and when she moistened them with the tip of her tongue, he found himself leaning forward almost without realizing it. "What brought you to the desert, sister?" "The same thing that brought you, I suspect. The search for truth." She stood gracefully, moving around the fire toward him, her habit whispering softly against the sand. "Though sometimes we find more than we bargain for." When she knelt beside him, close enough that he could feel the warmth radiating from her body, she reached inside her habit and withdrew something that made his heart stop dead in its tracks. A piece of charred wood from his ranch, carefully carved with his father's initials. "Tell me, Adam," she whispered, her breath warm against his ear, "do you believe in divine justice?" The chard would slip from Adam's trembling fingers and fell into the sand. His father had carved those initials the day they bought the land, promising that it would stay in the Baxter family forever. Now it existed only as a piece of evidence in the hands of a woman who claimed to serve God but moved with the grace of sin itself. Where did you get this? His voice came out rough, dangerous. Sister Rosalie remained kneeling beside him, so close that he could see golden flecks in her dark eyes that seemed to dance with their own inner light. Does it matter? What matters is that someone wanted you to have it. Her fingers brushed against his wrist as she spoke, and the contact sent a jolt of heat shooting up his arm. Someone who knows exactly what you've lost. You're no nun. The words escaped before he could stop them, carrying 3 weeks' worth of pent-up rage and confusion. Nuns don't travel alone through Apache country. They don't survive in the desert without water. And they sure as hell don't carry evidence from burned ranches. Instead of denying it, she smiled, and the expression transformed her face from simply beautiful to absolutely, undeniably dangerous. What gave me away? The jasmine oil, or the fact that I haven't asked you to pray with me once? He should have been angry, should have demanded answers. But all he could think about was the way her lips curved when she smiled, how her habit had slipped even further down her shoulder, revealing the pale slope of her collarbone, how every instinct screamed that she was trouble, while every nerve in his body begged him to find out what kind. Who are you really? Someone who's been looking for you, Adam Baxter. Someone who knows that 3 men burned your ranch while you were buying supplies that coincidentally took twice as long to load as usual. She traced patterns in the sand between them, her movements hypnotic in the firelight. Someone who knows you've been asking questions in every saloon from here to Tucson, looking for those men. The truth hit him like a physical blow. You know who burned my ranch. I know many things. She leaned closer, and he caught another intoxicating wave of that jasmine scent. I know Thomas Kellerman paid your supplier to delay you that day. I know Marcus Wade provided the kerosene. And I know Samuel Cross lit the match that destroyed everything your father built. 3 names he'd been hunting for weeks, delivered by a woman dressed as a nun in the middle of the desert. It was too convenient, too perfect. But the way she spoke them with such quiet certainty and something that looked like genuine sympathy made him believe every single word. Why tell me this? Her hand moved to rest against his chest, directly over his heart, and he felt the world shift beneath him. Because, Adam, sometimes God's justice requires very human hands. Her hand remained pressed against his chest, feeling the rapid drumbeat of his heart beneath her palm. The heat of her touch seemed to burn right through his shirt, branding him with a need that had nothing to do with vengeance and everything to do with the way she looked at him, like she could see straight into his soul. Justice, he repeated, his voice barely above a whisper. What kind of justice? The kind that balances the scales. She withdrew her hand slowly, deliberately, letting her fingers trail down his chest before pulling away completely. Thomas Kellerman owns half the banks in the territory. Marcus Wade supplies water to every ranch within 50 miles. Samuel Cross controls the telegraph lines. She stood and began pacing around the fire, her movements fluid and almost predatory. Separately, they're successful men with spotless reputations. Together, they've been systematically destroying small ranchers for 2 years, buying up their land for pennies after a series of convenient accidents. The pieces clicked into place in his mind like chambers aligning in a revolver. My father's ranch wasn't the first. The 7th, she stopped directly across from him, the fire dancing between them. But it will be the last if you're willing to help me stop them. Help you? He stood, closing some of the distance between them. Lady, I don't even know your real name. For all I know, you're working with them. The laugh that escaped her lips was rich and undeniably dangerous. If I were working with them, Adam, you'd already be dead. They ordered your elimination 3 days ago. She reached into her habit again and pulled out a folded piece of paper. $50 for the man who brings them proof of your death. The bounty poster bore his name and a rough sketch of his face. Someone had drawn a bold X across his forehead in red ink. His hands clenched into fists as the full reality sank in. He wasn't just hunting them anymore. They were actively hunting him. My real name is Rose Delqua. I was engaged to marry Samuel Cross just 2 months ago. Her voice now carried a tangible pain, real and raw. Until I discovered what he and his partners were doing. Until I learned that my father's death wasn't an accident. The firelight played across her features as she continued. They thought killing him would convince me to marry Samuel quickly and secure a position in New Orleans society. They didn't expect me to investigate. She touched the false habit she wore. They certainly didn't expect me to disappear from my own engagement party and track them across 3 states. So, you're not seeking divine justice. You want revenge? I want both. She moved closer again, and this time when she looked at him, he saw something that made his breath catch in his throat, a flicker of vulnerability carefully hidden beneath all that dangerous beauty. But I can't do it alone. They're too powerful, too connected. The smart thing would be to just ride away, leave her to her schemes, and find his own path to vengeance. But when she reached up and traced a line of his jaw with one finger, all thoughts of safety instantly fled his mind. What exactly are you asking me to do? Help me destroy them completely. Their reputations, their businesses, their lives. Her thumb brushed across his lower lip, and he fought the overwhelming urge to capture her hand with his mouth, starting with the man who lit the match that burned his father's dream to ashes. Before he could respond, the distinct sound of approaching horses echoed across the desert, and Rose's expression changed from seductive to deadly in an instant. Rose moved with startling speed, kicking sand over the fire until only glowing embers remained. "Get your rifle," she whispered. Her voice transformed from seductive to commanding. 3 riders, maybe 4. They've been tracking us since sunset. Adam grabbed his Winchester from beside his saddle, the metal instantly cold against his palms. "How do you know they're tracking us?" "Because I've been expecting them." She reached beneath her habit and withdrew a small derringer, its pearl handle gleaming faintly in the starlight. "Samuel doesn't like loose ends, and I'm the loosest end he's ever had." The hoofbeats grew louder, accompanied by low voices carrying on the still night air. Adam caught fleeting fragments of conversation, enough to know that these weren't casual travelers. Someone mentioned his name. Someone else laughed about easy money. Rose pressed herself against his back, her breath warm against his ear. "When I give the signal, you take the one on the left. I'll handle the other 2. You'll handle 2 men with that tiny gun?" Her lips brushed his earlobe as she spoke. "Adam, darling, there's a lot you don't know about me." The way she said darling made a wave of heat pool in his stomach, despite the mortal danger rapidly approaching. The riders emerged from the darkness, mere silhouettes against the vast star-filled sky. 3 men, heavily armed and moving with the chilling confidence of those accustomed to violence. The leader raised his hand, signaling the others to spread out. "Baxter," the leader called out, "we know you're here. Make this easy on everyone." Rose's hand found his shoulder, squeezing it once. A quick, reassuring gesture. He could feel the tension in her body, coiled like a spring, ready to explode. "Remember?" She breathed. "The one on the left." "What about the woman?" one of the riders asked. "Cross said to bring proof that Baxter's dead. Didn't say nothing about witnesses." The leader's laugh was cold and ugly. Shame to waste such a pretty nun. That was when Rose moved. She stepped out from behind Adam, her hands raised as if in surrender, the derringer concealed in her palm. "Please, gentlemen, I'm just a sister of mercy. This man offered me protection from the elements." The leader relaxed slightly, which was exactly what she wanted. "Sister, you picked the wrong protector. Step aside." "Of course." She moved closer to them, each step calculated and deceptively graceful. "But first, might I offer prayer for your souls?" The leader laughed. "Lady, well, we're sending your friend. Prayers won't help." "You're right." Rose's voice dropped to barely audible. "They won't." The derringer appeared in her hand, as if by magic, and her first shot took the leader square in the chest before he even had a chance to draw his own weapon. Adam's rifle barked almost simultaneously, dropping the rider on the left. The 3rd man wheeled his horse around, desperately trying to flee, but Rose's second shot caught him squarely in the back. 3 men dead in less than 10 seconds. Adam stared at her in a mix of amazement and growing unease. This wasn't just luck or desperation. This was cold, calculated professional expertise. Where did you learn to shoot like that? Rose walked to where the leader had fallen, retrieving something from his jacket pocket. I told you, Adam. There's a lot you don't know about me. She held up a telegram, and even in the dim light, he could clearly read Samuel Cross's signature at the bottom. The question is, she continued, turning to face him with an expression that was equal parts beautiful and utterly terrifying, are you ready to learn? The telegram crackled between Rose's fingers as she read it aloud by the pale starlight. Target confirmed alive. Eliminate immediately. Payment on proof of death. No witnesses. Cross. She looked up at Adam, and in her eyes, he saw something that made his chest tighten with apprehension. He's escalating faster than I expected. Adam holstered his rifle, his mind racing. 3 dead men lay scattered around their makeshift camp. And this woman, who'd appeared from absolutely nowhere, had just demonstrated killing skills that belonged to someone far more dangerous than a grieving fiancé. Who are you really, Rose? She walked to her horse, a magnificent black mare that had been expertly hidden in the shadows beyond the camp. From her saddlebags, she withdrew clothes that made his breath catch in his throat. Instead of the nun's habit, she pulled out a fitted black riding outfit that promised to showcase every single curve of her body. Turn around, she commanded softly. What? Unless you want to see exactly how much of a nun I'm not. The undeniable challenge in her voice made heat rush through his veins. He forced himself to turn away, but he could hear every soft whisper of fabric as she changed clothes behind him. I worked for the Pinkerton Detective Agency for 3 years. Her voice carried clearly in the desert air, specializing in infiltration and elimination of criminal organizations. My father wasn't just murdered, Adam. He was actively investigating Cross and his partners for the government. The rustle of clothing continued, and he fought the almost overwhelming urge to glance back over his shoulder. So you're a federal agent? Until I discovered that my father's death was ordered by the very same men who were paying my salary. A bitter edge crept into her voice. Turns out Cross is friends in very high places. When I tried to report what I'd learned, I found myself charged with stealing evidence and promptly marked for elimination. So you decided to handle yourself. I decided to disappear and handle it myself. The sounds of dressing finally stopped. You can turn around now. He turned and nearly lost his ability to breathe altogether. Gone was any pretense of religious modesty. Rose stood before him in form-fitting black leather that hugged every curve. Her dark hair was now freed from the confines of the habit and cascaded in loose waves around her shoulders. She looked like a beautiful, incredibly dangerous weapon, deadly and yet utterly irresistible. Better? She asked, though her knowing smile suggested she was well aware of exactly what effect she was having on him. You're gonna get us both killed. The words came out rougher than he'd intended. Probably. She stepped closer, close enough that he could see the soft moonlight reflected in her dark eyes. But what a way to go. Her fingers traced the buttons of his shirt, a touch that wasn't quite intimate, but definitely promising something that made his pulse race. The question is, Adam Baxter, are you willing to risk absolutely everything for a chance at real justice? His hand covered hers, trapping it against his chest. What exactly are you proposing? A partnership, your knowledge of the territory, my skills with infiltration and elimination. Together, we destroy Cross and his partners before they kill us both. Her free hand moved to rest against his jaw, her thumb gently brushing across his cheek. But I need to know that you can handle working with someone like me. Someone like you? Her smile was pure sin. Someone who's very good at getting what she wants, using whatever methods are necessary. She leaned closer, her lips almost touching his ear. Someone who's been thinking about kissing you since the moment you rode out of that dust cloud to find me in the desert. Before he could respond, she pulled back just enough to meet his eyes, and he saw a flicker of vulnerability there that made his chest ache. But first, I need to know what your answer will be when I ask you that question later tonight. What question? Rose's question hung between them like smoke from a dying fire, and Adam found himself trapped by eyes that held secrets he wasn't entirely sure he even wanted to discover. The way she looked at him, as if she were carefully memorizing every detail of his face, made something wild and reckless stir deep within his chest. The question I've been wanting to ask since I saw you ride out of that dust cloud to find me. Her hands moved to his shoulders, her fingers curling into the fabric of his shirt. But first, we need to discuss our immediate problem. She gestured toward the bodies of the 3 dead men. These 3 won't be missed until tomorrow. But when they are, Cross will send more, and they'll be better. We need to be somewhere else when that happens. Adam forced himself to focus on the practical matters at hand. Even though her close proximity was making clear thinking exceedingly difficult. There's an abandoned mine about 10 miles south. Good defensive position, water source, multiple escape routes. Perfect. She moved away from him, and he immediately felt a distinct loss of her warmth. We'll rest there tomorrow. Plan our approach. She began dragging the first body toward a natural depression in the rocks. Help me hide these, and we ride. Working together to conceal the evidence of their deadly encounter created an unexpected sense of intimacy. Their hands brushed as they moved rocks. Their bodies pressed close as they maneuvered the corpses into position. Every accidental touch sent a jolt of heat surging through his system. And from the subtle way Rose's breathing changed when he leaned across her, he knew he wasn't the only one affected. There, she said, stepping back to survey their handiwork. By the time anyone finds them, we'll be long gone. The vast desert stretched endlessly around them, painted silver by the soft moonlight and filled with the kind of profound silence that made even whispered words seem loud. Rose walked to where he stood beside their horses, and something in her expression made his mouth go suddenly dry. Before we ride into whatever's waiting for us, she said softly, I need to know something important. She stepped closer, close enough that he could feel the heat radiating from her body. I need to understand what kind of man you really are. Her hands moved to rest against his chest, and he could feel his heart hammering beneath her palms, because what they were about to embark on together would require absolute, unwavering trust. The kind of trust that came from knowing someone completely, inside and out. Rose, his voice came out rough. I've shown you who I really am, she continued, her voice dropping to barely a whisper. I've killed 3 men in front of you. I've admitted to being a trained assassin seeking revenge. I've told you I'm wanted by the same government I once served. Her hands moved up to frame his face, her thumbs tracing the strong line of his jaw. And yet you're still here. The moment stretched between them, charged an electric undercurrent of possibilities that could easily destroy them both. When she spoke again, her words carried the weighty significance of everything left unspoken. So tell me, Adam Baxter, she breathed, her lips so close to his that he could feel her words against his own mouth. Do you fear me or desire me? The question from the title hung suspended in the desert air between them, and every instinct he possessed screamed conflicting, contradictory answers. For a heartbeat that stretched into an eternity, Adam stared deeply into Rose's eyes and saw his own reflection caught somewhere between the soft starlight and the deepest shadow. Her question hung in the air like a challenge, like a promise, like the most dangerous thing he'd ever heard. Both, he said finally, his voice rough with raw honesty. I should fear you. Any sane man would run as far as he could from a woman who kills as easily as breathing and lies as beautifully as poetry. His hands came up to cover hers where they rested against his face. But I've never wanted anything more in my life than to find out what happens when I stop being sane. The smile that slowly spread across her lips was both radiant and absolutely terrifying. That's exactly what I was hoping you'd say. When she kissed him, it was nothing like the gentle, tentative touches he'd half imagined. Rose kissed him the way she did everything else, with complete commitment and deadly precision. Her mouth was a potent mix of fire and aged whiskey and whispered promises that had the potential to completely destroy him. And he kissed her back with 3 long weeks' worth of pent-up grief and seething anger and a burning need that had been steadily building since the moment he saw his father's ranch reduced to nothing but smoldering ash. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, she rested her forehead gently against his. We can't go back from this, Adam. Once we ride together, once we trust each other completely, there's no more pretending that this is just about simple revenge. I know, His thumb traced the delicate curve of her cheek, marveling at the incredible softness of skin that belonged to hands undeniably capable of killing. But I need you to know something, too. When this is finally over, when Cross and his partners are either dead or utterly destroyed, I don't want you to disappear into the night like some beautiful ghost. Her dark eyes searched his face, trying to decipher the meaning behind his words. What are you saying? I'm saying I lost everything I thought truly mattered when they burned my ranch. My father's dream, my future, my place in this world. He pulled her closer until there was absolutely no space left between them. But maybe some things need to burn the ground before you can actually build something better in their place. Rose's hands fisted tightly in the fabric of his shirt. Adam, what we're about to do, it's going to make us both criminals, federal fugitives. We'll never have what anyone would call a normal life. Since when has either of us ever been normal? He kissed her again, softer this time, but no less intense. Besides, I'd much rather be a wanted man with you by my side than a respectable man living completely alone without you. The sound of distant thunder rolled softly across. Out in the desert, Rose suddenly stopped and scanned the horizon. That's not thunder. More riders are coming in fast from the direction of town. Cross is already sending reinforcements. Time to go, she said, her eyes never leaving his face. Are you ready for this? Really ready? Because once we start, we don't stop until every one of them is dead or ruined. Adam swung himself up onto his horse, then reached down to help her mount. The feel of her hand in his, the trust that was so clear in the gesture, sealed something between them that felt stronger than any marriage vow. Let's finish what they started, he said. Rose smiled, and in that expression he saw the promise of justice, of vengeance, and of a future he'd never even dreamed of. Samuel Cross has no idea what's coming his way. They rode south toward the abandoned mine, leaving behind the bodies of their enemies, and also leaving behind any pretense that either of them would come out of this the same. In the distance, the sound of pursuit got louder, but for the first time since his world burned down around him, Adam Baxter wasn't running from his fate. He was riding straight toward it with the most dangerous woman he'd ever met right there by his side. 6 months later, Adam stood on the porch of his rebuilt ranch, watching Rose tend the horses in the corral. The morning sun caught the gold in her hair, and he still felt that familiar rush of heat every single time she looked at him with that knowing smile. The wanted posters with their names on them had been taken down 3 weeks ago. It was amazing how quickly federal charges could disappear when you presented evidence of government corruption to the right newspaper editors. Rose's Pinkerton training had proven invaluable in documenting every bribe, every illegal land grab, every murder that Cross and his partners had orchestrated. Samuel Cross had died in his jail cell, apparently by his own hand. Though the guard had been mysteriously absent for exactly the amount of time it would take someone skilled to make murder look like suicide. Thomas Kellerman lost his banks when federal investigators seized all of his assets, and he fled to Mexico rather than face trial. Marcus Wade had been found dead in his well, shot twice in the back of the head by persons unknown. Justice, Rose had called it, divine and very human. The ranch was different now, bigger than it had been before. They bought the surrounding properties from grateful families who'd been compensated for their losses with money seized from Cross's accounts. What had once been his father's modest dream was now a thriving operation that employed half the territory. You're thinking too hard again, Rose said, walking up the porch steps with that fluid grace that still made his breath catch in his throat. She'd traded her black leathers for practical ranch clothes, but she still wore her guns. Some habits just died hard. I'm just thinking about how much has changed. He pulled her into his arms, marveling as always at how perfectly she fit against him. A year ago, I was just another small rancher trying to make ends meet. And now I'm a reformed criminal who owns the biggest ranch in 3 counties, married to the most dangerous woman in the territory. He kissed her temple, breathing in the scent of jasmine and gun oil that was uniquely Rose. Not exactly the life my father planned for me, but it's the life you chose. Her arms encircled his waist, and he felt that familiar warmth that always came with her touch. No regrets? Adam looked out the land they built together, bought with blood and sealed with trust. In the distance, He could see their hired hands working the cattle, men who'd lost everything to Cross's schemes and found new purpose here. Good men who asked no questions about their employer's past and earned loyalty through honest work. None, he said, meaning it completely. Though I do have one question I've been meaning to ask. Rose pulled back to look at him, eyebrow raised in an expression he'd learned meant trouble. Only one? He grinned, feeling younger than he had since before the fire. When strangers ride up asking about the owners of this place, and you smile that particular smile of yours, he traced a line of her jaw with one finger. Do you think they fear us or desire us? Rose's laugh was rich and warm and full of promises for their future. Both, she said, echoing his words from that night in the desert. And that's exactly how I like it. They kissed on the porch of their rebuilt dream. Two dangerous people who'd found something worth being dangerous for. And Adam knew his father would have been proud of what they'd built from the ashes.